There is a profound, terrifying stillness that descends upon a suburban home when you unlock the front door at exactly 9 o'clock on a Friday morning, expecting to be 200 miles away on a corporate training shift, only to step into a silent kitchen and realize your entire life has been liquidated behind your back. It doesn't open with a loud, theatrical screaming match or shattered glass flying across the living room. It begins with the simple, mechanical chime of a canceled train notice flashing on your smartphone screen at the transit station, and the freezing, absolute clarity that settles in your chest when you find two unwashed wine glasses resting on your quartz counter next to a custom designer lighter engraved with your closest friend's name. I didn't lose my balance, I didn't drop my luggage, and I didn't scream down the corridor. I simply walked into our master bedroom, observed my husband and the woman who had attended our wedding sleeping peacefully under my sheets, and executed a quiet, systematic domestic eviction that would strip them of their dignity and alter their parameters permanently before the morning news cycle concluded. Let me show you how a woman who survives 10-hour manual labor shifts at a commercial assembly plant in the industrial sector of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, can utilize absolute silence to dismantle a multi-year betrayal and secure total legal dominance without ever raising her pitch. My name is Eleanor. I am 29 years old. If you saw me managing the high-precision automated assembly components and logistical compliance logs behind the protective glass lines at a heavy manufacturing plant in the industrial sector of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you would see a highly resilient, completely methodical woman. I have striking, deep hazel green eyes that have spent a decade monitoring mechanical tolerances, rich, dark mahogany hair that I keep styled in a clean, elegant shoulder-length cut, and a life measured entirely by the unyielding laws of data verification and structural documentation. I didn't inhabit an elite theoretical world where assets were inherited or milestones happened by fluid luxury. My home was a custom-renovated contemporary craftsman cottage located in an upscale suburban perimeter of Pittsburgh, a space built on 8 years of absolute, simple devotion and a rigid lifestyle pattern funded entirely by my own physical labor. I managed the household accounts, performed the structural maintenance, and balanced our shared checking profiles with the exact same mathematical precision I used to clear complex component defects at the plant. I trusted that our hard-working routine was a permanent shield against the world. To our neighborhood and commercial circle, my marriage to Raymond was the absolute benchmark of a stable, deeply aligned modern partnership. We didn't have separate financial silos, hidden luxury assets, or unresolved domestic friction. We utilized synchronized calendar applications, maintained a transparent shared ledger on the cloud, and relied completely on the predictable schedule of my shifts. Because my position required me to occasionally travel out of state for technical training certifications, Raymond was frequently left as the sole operator of the residential perimeter during winter cycles. I believed that this structural transparency was the ultimate proof of mutual honor, completely unaware that the safety protocols I designed were about to map out the complete destruction of my innocence. My husband, Raymond, was 31. He was an independent architectural consultant and design draftsman whose charm was smooth, calculated, and immensely effective with suburban developers. He was broad-shouldered, with a wardrobe full of premium casual clothes, dark hair that he kept perfectly groomed for client presentations, and a confident, easy laugh that made him highly popular at the local commercial association. He was the model of a supportive, deeply appreciative partner during my long manufacturing runs. When the plant director first assigned me to the intensive 2-day technical compliance seminar upstate, Raymond sat at our kitchen counter for hours, helping me download the transit manifests, his face carefully arranged into a mask of pride for my career expansion. He always positioned himself as the primary curator of our domestic comfort, constantly reminding me that my grueling overtime hours at the assembly line were the direct engine expanding our lifestyle. I trusted that professional pride implicitly. He wasn't a reckless gambler. He was a man who lived by blueprints and measurement data. And I believed that a man whose entire career depended on strict regulatory codes couldn't possibly possess the chaotic, reckless cruelty to forge an alternative lifestyle inside his own home. I offered him an absolute, unvarnished loyalty, completely unaware that the man managing our joint accounts was using my corporate travel schedule to turn our residence into a playground for Cincy alignment. The secondary parameter in this structural anomaly was Lydia. Lydia had been my closest neighbor and confidant for 5 years, occupying a beautifully designed property just 2 blocks down our street suburban desk. She was an independent boutique fashion consultant who managed her business with a superficial, chaotic charm that I had spent years stabilizing through personal loans, accounting advice, and home renovation assistance. She had access keys to our property under the administrative agreement that she would monitor our utility systems and check the mail when my manufacturing shifts extended into the dark hours of the weekend. I viewed her as a biological extension of my own identity, a sister in survival. I remember sitting on our rear deck during the previous spring barbecue, watching Lydia hand Raymond an itemized design contract near the outdoor kitchen, and feeling a deep sense of psychological peace. I had no idea that while she was utilizing my technical resources to balance her boutique's credit sheets, she was actively utilizing my midnight technical shifts to cross the street and construct a parallel parasite relationship with my husband. They believed that the heavy, exhausting nature of my manual labor left my brain too sedated to notice the micro-behavioral deviations inside my own home. Trust inside an ordinary, hardworking marriage is often the most dangerous vulnerability because we assume shared labor and long-term milestones create a permanent moral boundary against malice. When you are performing physical shifts to fund a lifestyle, your brain automatically categorizes your partner's and your best friend's presence as safe, leaving you entirely unprotected against a systematic deception. Have you ever realized that the person who lived just 2 blocks away was utilizing your work hours to occupy your home? Tell me your experience below. The physical breakdown of their camouflage initialized at precisely 4:30 a.m. on a freezing Friday morning. I had packed my legal travel folders, locked my design tablet in my bag, and exited our artisan cottage to board the early regional commuter express train that would carry me 200 miles upstate for a mandatory 48-hour manufacturing compliance seminar. Raymond remained in bed, his eyes half closed, offering me a sleepy, calculated kiss before reminding me to text him the moment my training manifest cleared the terminal. I arrived at the Central Transit Hub at 5:15 a.m., checked my luggage, and sat in the departure lounge to await the 6 a.m. boarding call. The weather was hostile, a thick, freezing rain rolling off the river that instantly turned the rail tracks into a hazard matrix. At 7:45 a.m., after a 2-hour administrative delay, the station loudspeakers cracked with a high-pitched electronic tone. The automated departure monitors instantly shifted from green to a solid, unyielding amber. The announcer's voice was flat, mechanical, and absolute. Attention, all regional passengers. Due to an ice block structural failure on the Northern River Bridge line, all commuter rail traffic has been terminated for the next 24 hours. All ticketing profiles are void. I didn't panic. I didn't file an administrative complaint at the ticketing counter. I simply reclaimed my travel bag, adjusted my coat, and walked out to the transit platform to hail a local rideshare vehicle. Because the road conditions were severely gridlocked by the freezing storm, the commute back to our suburban sector required over an hour of slow, automated crawling through the morning traffic. My smartphone's screen processed a notification banner at 8:40 a.m. I opened my private messaging application to text Raymond that my training session had been canceled and that my arrival at the front door was imminent. But my finger froze over the touchscreen. A sudden, cold compliance intuition, The same psychological metric that allows me to catch microcracks and heavy steel machinery before a system failure told me to hold the data. A life spent auditing structural risks teaches you that an unexpected return is a powerful data capture window. I deleted the text bubble, locked my device, and allowed the vehicle to pull up to our property in absolute silence. The clock on my dashboard read precisely 9 a.m. when the vehicle departed our driveway. The suburban street was entirely quiet, the gray morning rain dripping off the oak trees near the fence. I walked up the stone path, avoiding the groan of the lower step, and slid my private keycard into the automated smart home lock interface. The deadbolt clicked open with a soft electronic hum. I stepped into the entryway, closing the heavy oak door behind me without letting the latch drop loudly. The house smelled of expensive cedarwood incense and the distinct, cloying sweetness of a high-end French vanilla perfume that I never permitted inside our living perimeter due to my clinical respiratory guidelines. I walked into the open kitchen space to drop my travel folders onto the quartz island. The room was empty, but the unwashed assets left on the counter instantly mapped out a cruel structural anomaly. Resting directly next to the sink were 2 crystal wine glasses, their lower rims holding the residue of an expensive vintage red blend that Raymond strictly reserved for special celebrations. Next to the glasses sat 2 empty ceramic plates holding the remains of an upscale steak dinner from the previous evening. I turned my body slowly, my hazel green eyes narrowing as I moved from the kitchen corridor into the main living room. The room was immaculate, except for a single small object resting face up on the contemporary mahogany coffee table. It was a custom-designed, engraved rose gold luxury lighter. I reached my hand down, picked up the cold metal, and turned it over in my fingers. Etched into the polished surface in clean, fluid cursive was a single word: Lydia. The data was complete, precise, and absolute. Lydia had not stopped by at 5 a.m. to check the mail or monitor our heating systems. She crossed the street the exact second my commuter vehicle departed our driveway at dawn, converting my hard-earned domestic sanctuary into a calculated playground. The oak bedroom door was resting halfway open, a gap of exactly 4 inches that allowed the warm light from the bedside lamps to cut across the dark hardwood corridor. I stepped through the threshold, holding my device steady, the high-definition lens recording the scene in real time. They were completely unhurried, entirely relaxed, operating with the absolute confidence of thieves who believed the perimeter was secure until my training manifest concluded on Sunday night. Raymond and Lydia were sleeping side by side beneath my custom IPEC sheets, their bodies intertwined in a position of total, unvarnished physical intimacy that erased every single layer of my 8-year marriage in the span of a fraction of a second. I stood at the foot of the bed for exactly 60 seconds, watching them breathe, my smartphone capturing their faces, the timestamps, and the scattered clothing on the rug under a permanent encrypted file format synchronized directly to my firm's legal cloud backup. I didn't scream, I didn't pull the blankets off their bodies, and I didn't strike the stranger sleeping in my sheets. A woman who has spent 10 years managing heavy automated machinery knows that an emotional explosion is an inefficient use of energy. You don't fight the defect, you isolate it and remove it from the system. I didn't lose my breath, I didn't drop the lighter, and I didn't shed a single tear on the mahogany table. I simply slipped the rose gold metal into my pocket, activated the silent video recording app on my smartphone and walked up the carpeted stairs toward our master bedroom suite with the slow, mechanical pace of an executioner. I turned on my heel, walked out of the master suite, and descended the stairs to the laundry room corridor where we kept our heavy structural storage trunks. I retrieved 2 large industrial-grade plastic disposal bags that I used for factory waste management. I walked back up to the bedroom corridor, bypassed the sleeping couple, and entered the master walk-in closet. With a clean, unhurried precision, I grabbed every single garment belonging to Lydia: her custom designer dresses, her boutique linen shirts, and her expensive footwear, and shoved them violently into the first plastic bag. I moved to Raymond's side of the wardrobe, pulled down his leather suitcases from the upper rack, and packed his primary tailored suits, his documentation folders, and his personal communication hubs into the secondary containers. Both bodies violently flinched, their eyes flying open in an instant, pale terror as their brains scrambled to process the image of the woman standing before them. Raymond scrambled backward against the headboard, his face losing its color, his hands trembling as he looked at my hazel green eyes to the smartphone screen, still recording his panic. Lydia let out a high-pitched, breathless gasp, pulling the sheets up to her chin as her eyes darted toward the empty closet corridor. "Eleanor, wait! Oh my God, what are you doing here?" Raymond stammered, his voice thin, cracked, and completely stripped of his smooth consulting confidence. "The train. You're supposed to be upstate. This isn't what it looks like. Lydia just stopped by because the pipes." "You have exactly 5 minutes to exit the perimeter," I said, my voice perfectly flat, carrying a cold, resonant echo that completely killed the remaining warmth of the room. Lydia began to weep openly, her superficial boutique poise completely shattered as she saw the rose gold lighter resting in my hand. They scrambled out of the bed, grabbing whatever discarded undergarments remained on the rug, and rushed down the stairs in a state of absolute, pathetic desperation. I followed exactly 3 steps behind them, my posture rigid, my eyes fixed on their trembling shoulders. They stepped out onto the front porch, the freezing rain hitting their skin as the heavy oak door swung shut behind them. I turned the brass deadbolt, clicked the electronic chain lock, and severed their connection to my world with a single mechanical turn. I dragged the heavy bags down the stairs, opened the front door, and placed them directly on the wet concrete of the outer corridor, exposing their entire personal inventory to the freezing morning rain. I walked back up to the master bedroom, stood directly at the foot of the bed, and dropped my heavy leather travel bag on the floorboards with a loud, explosive thud that echoed off the high ceiling like a gunshot. The subsequent dissolution process did not resemble a standard amicable Pennsylvania divorce. It transformed into a cold, multi-layered civil war that completely split our affluent suburban social network down the center. On Monday morning, less than 48 hours after the deadbolt clicked into place, my legal counsel delivered a formal 100-page petition to the Allegheny County Court. It wasn't a simple request for division of property. It was an aggressive, fault-based liquidation brief grounded in civil fraud, breach of fiduciary duty to our shared estate trust, and grand concealment of household lifestyle capital. The legal strategy was absolute. Utilizing my administrative credentials as the primary manager of our shared household financial accounts, I spent the weekend executing immediate court-ordered emergency freezing injunctions on every joint bank account, every corporate vehicle title, and the primary deed to our contemporary Craftsman cottage. I severed his access keys to our shared investment lines, leaving him entirely isolated from the capital structure he assumed was half his property. Raymond hired an expensive celebrity defense attorney who spent 3 months attempting to claim that an unexpected return did not justify a total forfeiture of his real estate equity, arguing that a single domestic infraction did not constitute a fault-based baseline for total asset reallocation under state law. They didn't understand that a factory compliance specialist never enters a courtroom without a mathematical verification trail. The judge, a senior, unyielding legal authority with 30 years of experience auditing commercial asset and domestic fraud disputes, sat at his elevated bench, reviewed the high-definition video data from the bedroom, and shook his head with an expression of profound, chilling disgust. This court does not require a prolonged structural debate to identify a complete, calculated breakdown of marital fidelity, the judge ruled, his voice echoing off the paneled walls of the courtroom. The respondent systematically utilized his spouse's grueling manual labor shifts to convert her private residence into a location for identity theft and domestic treason, while using her career travel as an administrative window. The digital and physical ledger provided by the petitioner is absolute. The administrative integrity of this court will not protect a financial and psychological predator who treats his marriage as a provisional convenience. The litigation dragged through 6 months of intense forensic discovery, but the outcome was mathematical. Under the strict parameters of Pennsylvania codes regarding the intentional dissipation of community assets and marital fraud, the judge executed an absolute total asset forfeiture. Every single asset, the Craftsman Cottage, the joint corporate investment portfolios, the liquid cash reserves, and the residual rights to our consulting trust, were authorized entirely to me. Raymond was left with nothing but his clothing and a massive debt obligation to cover my firm's legal fees. He was left completely penniless in the middle of the city. The collateral damage hit Lydia's household with the exact same unyielding force. On the 3rd week of our discovery process, my legal counsel made the calculated decision to share the verified video files and the Rolls Gold lighter metadata with Lydia's husband, a prominent local corporate developer named Thomas. Thomas didn't waste a single hour on emotional negotiations. The moment his legal counsel cross-referenced the recovered file timestamps and the forged land options that Raymond had attached to her boutique's credit lines during their secret weekend encounters, he initialized a secondary, parallel dissolution lawsuit in the neighboring county court. He frozen her corporate business lines, pulled his family trust's capital out of her boutique, and secured a total divorce decree that stripped her of her residential rights to their suburban property. 2 separate empires of family success were entirely flattened because a train departure was canceled on a Friday morning. I completely erased both of them from my lineage, deleting their names from our family records with the exact same finality I used to wipe corrupted files from the manufacturing databases. The landscape of my world has been completely reorganized since that freezing Friday morning inside the suburban cottage. I didn't stay in Pittsburgh to listen to their mutual excuses or navigate the emotional wreckage of a broken neighborhood framework. I utilized the absolute clarity of the financial fraud logs and the total divorce settlement to permanently relocate my consulting and manufacturing operations to another district, ensuring that no member of my past could ever breach my professional perimeter. The corporate assets were secured entirely under my name, and my physical position remains in a status of absolute, unshakable strength. Raymond and Lydia tried to maintain their business connection after the scandal, but a partnership built on the theft of a hard-working spouse's trust cannot survive the cold reality of a public bankruptcy listing. According to rare updates from distant legal contacts, their life is a constant, suffocating prison of paralysis. Raymond was terminated from every major design project in the state, and he currently works an entry-level position at a regional salvage facility outside the county line. Lydia lives in a cramped rental near the state line, working a low-wage manual sorting job at a local textile warehouse, her social circle permanently destroyed by the neighborhood blacklisting. I kept my position, my firm capital, and my absolute independence. I was promoted to the managing vice president of our firm's international forensic compliance division, using my expanded resources to establish a private legal defense network that helps working-class women secure their personal titles and corporate assets during high-conflict marital dissolutions. I became the sole architect of my own security. The true resolution materialized not in a courtroom, but on the sun-drenched terrace of my new apartment overlooking the historic waterfront square. It was a bright, pristine morning, the cool breeze moving the curtains of the open deck. I was sitting in an outdoor lounge chair, drinking an iced green tea, reviewing our department's quarterly global compliance expansions on my tablet, completely at peace. My personal device buzzed with an incoming encrypted notification from an unlisted international domain. It was an email from Raymond. Eleanor, the message read, the syntax thin, cracked, and completely stripped of his former professional arrogance. My parents won't even look at me at Christmas, and because of the fraud record from the Pittsburgh board, I can't get a commercial design loan anywhere in this state. Lydia left for the border last month after the bank took the vehicles. You completely erased my entire life. Was it really worth destroying an entire household just for an unexpected return at 9 in the morning? I leaned back against the plush cushions of my lounge chair, looking out at the glittering landscape, my powerful victory smile deepening as I placed my fingers onto the digital screen. I didn't finish your life, Raymond. I simply allowed the commercial system to output the exact reality of the data you chose to enter into my master bedroom while I was working to support our assets. You chose to sign a digital contract of your own betrayal. Enjoy the final compilation of your choices. I hit send, deleted the string from the server cache, and permanently blocked the domain. He remains inside his self-built cage, his name just an erased entry in my future compliance logs. The past is a secured perimeter, and my home finally stands on its own unshakable foundation. Do you know why I am telling you this story from the edge of this open terrace today? Because the predators and deceivers of this world want you to believe that if you are a regular, structured person who focuses on your data and trusts your family, you are too weak to defend your own life. They think that because you are quiet, because you ignore their small slights while coordinating their family assets, you must be blind to their large conspiracies. They believe a gaslighted heart will always collapse into useless tears. But they do not understand the absolute, unalterable laws of patience and documentation. Your life does not belong to the people who try to manipulate your absence using your own house keys. And you don't need a loud screaming match, a public scene, or a chaotic confrontation to execute absolute justice. You just need the cold, silent discipline to collect the data, secure the evidence, and wait for the exact moment to let their own greed pull the trigger on their existence. Raymond thought he could steal my sanctuary because I was a quiet operator at an assembly line. He forgot the most basic rule of the system backups. The woman who manages the files always knows exactly how to liquidate the assets. I am Eleanor. The audit is finalized, the asset is secured, and my path finally stands on its own unshakable foundation. Now, I have a final question for you, the person listening to my voice in the quiet of your own room tonight. If you discovered your husband was utilizing your business trips to conduct a secret affair with your neighbor and left her designer lighter on your table, would you lose your temper and scream at them in the bedroom? Or would you wait patiently for your legal team to freeze their entire corporate asset structure and watch them get removed by investigators in front of their own board partners? Tell me your strategy in the comments below. I am analyzing your logic.